Hello, and after an extended hiatus, welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And we are actually back, and theoretically, we should be back for a little while at the very least. It's been a while, but I'm excited to start doing this again.
Here we are. Life is no longer in the way. We can get back to giving you this sweet, sweet content on a weekly basis. Welcome back, everyone.
Important things. Like, let's be honest here. Like, life is... Fuck that shit. We're here only to entertain you. So I hope you are ready and just willing to accept our entertainment with every fiber of your being.
Yes. Allow us in your world.
That was a very aggressive opening, and I am so sorry for this.
Welcome back, everybody.
We're back. We're talking about Annihilation, which at this point we realize is a little bit of a older take, but this is a movie that's going to be in my top 5 at the end of the year, just about guaranteed. So I really want to talk about it. Sorry, but it's gonna happen. I don't get many good new science fiction properties anymore, and to have this whole all-female led, all really cool, kind of interesting science fiction piece come out this year is really, really exciting for me. I haven't been this excited about science fiction since Arrival 2.5 years ago.
Was that 2.5 years ago? Shit.
I don't know. I thought it's like 2015, wasn't it?
I guess so. Huh. Well, yeah, so we're not talking about Arrival this week, though. We are talking about Annihilation. Both start with A. Regardless. Yeah, so I thought it was okay. Well, that's not being quite fair. Annihilation was visually, for sure, a beautiful film. Lots of great imagery. Worth the price of admission for that alone, I would say. And the story, for one reason or another, just didn't quite land with me. I didn't feel quite the same profound feeling that a lot of other people seem to get from the film. And part of that might be my fault for maybe having expectations of it, because by the time we had set our day to return and we decided we were going to be talking about Annihilation, it's been a few weeks, so the hot takes are already out there. And it's possible that I let myself expect too much of it and was disappointed that it wasn't 2001: A Space Odyssey levels of, like, profound and impactful. But at the same time, just a few things in the story didn't quite end up coming together for me. I think that's probably the best way to put it, is that I kept waiting for the story to really click with me and for it to really come together in terms of theme, in terms of some sort of, like, emotional feeling, and it just didn't quite end up happening, even though there were lots of moments within it, I would say, that had a strong visual impact or were really tense. So overall, definitely not a movie that I hated by any means, but not one that, I mean, if we're using this framing, like, it probably will not be in my top 5 for the year, if that makes sense.
And I can't fault you for that. As I said, a lot of this might have to do with the fact that science fiction is my go-to genre, and to get a good new science fiction movie is so rare, and I'm always really excited about it. So, I mean, that could just be why I'm really love this movie. I do agree that I think that there are some parts of it that I would see changed, but nothing about it that really kind of lowers it in my eyes to a point that it's, I don't want to say irredeemable, because that sounds really strong, but just not as good, to be perfectly frank, just a little bit worse. So I obviously highly recommend this one. If you haven't seen it yet, please go give them your money. Tell them we want more of this, please.
Yes, that is a good point. Definitely go see it. Like I said, visually, just stunning, worth your time. And as far as, the free marketplace of ideas and capitalism and showing the studios what you want to see, then I certainly think that in terms of tone, in terms of this being, it's based on a novel, so it's not an original property, but having an all-female cast, or predominantly female cast, there's a lot of good in this movie, even if I don't think it quite gets there as a work unto itself. I think in general, I agree that it would be nice if we saw more movies like it.
Give me one less Ant-Man and one more Blade Runner, please. That's all I really want.
Is this the first year where we are getting 3 Marvel movies?
We are getting 6.
6?
I'm sorry. I think we're getting 6 superhero movies overall.
Okay. I mean specifically the MCU.
Well, all right. Let me break. We're gonna have this quick discussion because we're getting Venom from Sony.
Oh, that's right.
We're getting Black Panther, Ant-Man and Wasp, the first of the Infinity War, as well as Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse. So that's 5 MCU movies this year. And we're also getting Aquaman, I believe?
Yeah, Aquaman at the end of the year.
There's 6 fucking superhero movies. Look, I love these. Getting the Infinity War was my fucking dream since the beginning of this shit. And it's happening, and I don't care, and it kills me. It hurts me inside.
At least Black Panther was good?
Black Panther was really good.
It was really good.
That's not why we're here. Let's talk about Annihilation. We're going to dive into spoilers pretty much right away. There's a lot to talk about, and it's not going to be so much of a thematic episode, kind of a departure from our norm where we normally here's the theme of this, and, the pacing implies this. I want to talk a lot about, the mechanics of death in this movie, and kind of at the end, we want to talk about our feelings surrounding it and how it kind of missed its mark for some of us. Jackson. So I want to start with how there's a couple ways that death is portrayed in this movie, and one of them is really subtle, and I love it so much. I think it's really, really cool. But I'm going to kind of preface it with the gory one. The first actively acknowledged death is one of our scientists, and I apologize, I haven't seen this movie in a week and a half. I saw it opening weekend, so I'm a little fuzzy on some of the scientists. But she is mauled by a bear, and it is we don't really see it happening, but we witness the aftermath of it. And it is clearly a very gory event, very rough to watch. Another character meets a similar fate by the same bear, which absorbs the voice of the person it killed. This movie's wild, and I'm not even going to attempt to explain that. Just understand that there's reflections of your own DNA that appear in other creatures, which allow for these weird parallelisms to happen. You got to go watch the movie to actually try and understand it, because I'm going to just butcher it. But these are 2 very visceral, real deaths. And when added on to the gentleman who gets his stomach cut open to reveal that his insides are moving, go watch the movie. If you don't know what I'm talking about. They're all very visceral, and you feel a lot during them. You are witnessing just terrible, terrible ways to die and awful things happening to these people. But I would argue that those aren't the worst deaths in the movie. There is a whole nother side of people dying that if you're not paying attention, you don't even realize it's happening. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, I encourage you to go watch it and then come back, because we're going to talk about people's forearms. And with that context, it's really interesting to go watch. If you know what I'm talking about, or even if you don't, there are figure 8 tattoos on a number of the characters' arms. And you kind of start to notice them. They're all kind of like tucked away in corners, or they're usually in one of the thirds of the frame. So like your eyes are still kind of drawn to it, even if it's not the focal point. And so you kind of start to notice that certain characters have this 8 on their arms. And in the beginning of the movie, it's not explicitly clear as to why or how. If you're paying attention, you notice that Natalie Portman's character, before she goes in, doesn't have it. And in the interview scenes where the time has skipped ahead, she has this figure 8 tattoo. And you're kind of watching it, trying to piece together how it is, where she got it. And you start to notice that other characters have it. And the character that really solidifies what it is the man whose stomach gets cut open. As they're doing it, you notice that he has the tattoo on his arm. And at the end of the movie, when it's revealed that Natalie Portman's character is in fact part of the entity, the opposing force of this movie that's not really given any sort of definitive name or character, it is the Shimmer of the movie. You realize that the tattoo signifies people who have been replaced. They are people who have, in one way or another, kind of vanished from themselves and been replaced with this being. And there's something really haunting about that, and it's really subtly effective as well. Like, if you're not... A lot of the movie makes sense once you notice these tattoos. If you're not paying attention, though, it's really good, and it's really upsetting.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that I noticed my first time through, just because of how I watch movies in general, and also the fact that I am not a super detail-oriented person, and I will very easily miss things when I am focused on something else, which is usually like plot, theme, metaphor, like all that English major, like high school mumbo jumbo that like I've been trained to like look for. Oh God, why did I get an English degree? Anyway. Anyway, but no, that is one of the things that is I really do appreciate about the movie, is that in addition to just being really beautiful in terms of sets, or really like haunting, or really good at building tension, like those scenes with the bear, in addition to having the like bear take on the scientist's voice, that's just like a great concept for like a horror scene. But just, they do such a great job of, like, building tension and making, and just doing all the little, all the smaller work to make a concept like that, like, kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. And so there's just that level to it, and then also, the smaller details, of which, this isn't even the only one, that at the time... I didn't notice, just kind of watching for plot, but the fact that they're there, like, shows how capable the director is with visual storytelling.
Yeah, there's a lot of plot in this movie that is never explicitly stated. One of the characters ends up going crazy, and I'm 90% sure she ends up with the tattoo on her arm before she does, which is a really interesting kind of parallel there. Like, there's just a whole lot of quiet storytelling that gives a lot of the scenes a whole different layer, a whole new meaning to it. And it's wonderful to watch and try and parse.
Well, you know what? With that example of the girl going crazy, I would be interested to see if she had the tattoo, because I think that would make that scene more effective for me because I felt watching it that her, like, there had been some tension in the group, but that she went so far as to, like, pull the gun on them and, like, tie them up. Felt like a bit of a jump, and not, like, something that I couldn't reconcile between just what's going on, their brains being messed with by the shimmer, and, you know, it wasn't, like, too much of a stretch, but it wasn't super satisfying. But now that you mention it, I almost think it would be more interesting if the character who was going crazy was the one without the tattoo, and, like, you know, the one, like, with her last, like, screaming, like, flail in the face of, like, an overwhelming force, as opposed to everyone else who has maybe just been sort of indoctrinated or accepted it.
I know at the time Natalie Portman's character didn't have the tattoo. As I said, I watched this. Once I noticed the tattoos, I watched intently at Forearms. So I apologize that I don't remember who had the tattoo at the time. But I know Natalie Portman's character didn't. So I think it's really interesting either way, whether she did or did not have the tattoo. Because if she did have the tattoo and went crazy, she still sacrificed herself for the group. She still threw her life at the horrifying bear monster to try and save the rest of them. If she didn't have the tattoo, it is kind of a semblance of her throwing her sanity away and doing everything she can in the face of this immovable threat, as you said. I think no matter how you look at it, it's really interesting. Especially as just pure visual storytelling. As I said, there's never anything that's like, wow, look at this fucking tattoo I just got. Isn't it weird, everyone? Hey, audience, type of thing. So I like that a lot. That said, it does kind of get thrown away at the end when they go, hey, look at this weird thing I got. Isn't it weird?
And that might actually be one of my bigger criticisms of the film in general, come to think of it, is that there are a lot of times where the film doesn't feel the need to spell things out. And let the visuals let the tone and the composition convey information, build feeling, build tension, etc. But then there are other times where it does feel a little bit more expository in terms of just like you said, sort of making it obvious and belaboring the point a little bit. So like with the scene, and I'm a little bit torn about this because in general, I'm not the kind of person who is going to dock a story too many points, so to speak, for making its themes and intentions clear and then executing on them as best as it can. But this felt like the kind of movie that really benefits from having that hands-off kind of touch. So when we get the scenes of the characters kind of outright just sort of saying their motivations to each other in the audience, it feels more like we could have gotten that information another way. It's not so bad with Natalie Portman's character because she's the protagonist and we get enough we get a little bit more of a holistic look at her. But with the other characters, it felt like they were all just a little bit one note, and that instead of letting their actions sort of define them and like imply whatever state of mind they would have to be to go on this suicide mission or how they're reacting to this change, it feels like the movie will do that visual work and then sort of undercut itself by just saying it outright. Like, we're all self-destructive. We've all got baggage or trauma. And, like, there are a couple good lines that really do, like, work. But then it almost feels like the movie, the dialogue scenes go on just a little bit more than they need to and say just a little bit too much that the visuals could maybe be pulling the legwork for.
I feel like a lot of times it's really easy to jump to, oh, what about studio meddling or something like that. But I can't help but wonder how much of this kind of was studio meddling, because I feel like a lot of the end scene when she's hugging Oscar Isaacs feels kind of tacked on in a way, and there's just certain moments of it that feel really out of place. So I'm wondering if it was like, nah, we got to put this in. It's too dense for the audience, because like 2001 is a weirdly apt comparison for a lot of this movie, at least in terms of its pacing and some of its not themes but motifs, like visual motifs.
Visuals, motifs. Yeah. I would honestly describe it pretty much the whole time I was thinking, like, Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, plus Aliens plus 2001 was pretty much, like, how I would summarize the, like, aesthetic of this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a really good way of summarizing it. That's what it is. And so I imagine that the director, whose name I'm totally blanking on right now, it's Alex Garland, was looking to give it a little bit more of a 2001 atmosphere, a little bit more of a challenging ideas behind it. Like, there's enough of really interesting ideas, like the tattoos, which are clearly there to, solve a riddle that wanted to be presented. It felt very Blade Runner-esque, like the Blade Runner director's cut, where you have a lot more opportunity to decide, is Deckard a replicant? Is he not a replicant? So I think it's really, I want to say studio meddling, but I think that's just because I really like this movie, and I would love to see like a director's cut to see if that solves some of the problems that we have, that kind of opens up the more challenging ending or more challenging scenes. It just kind of along the same lines of just scenes that seem so wildly fucking out of place in this movie is the first time that we see they encounter anything is this horrible alligator thing, but a woman is standing in a doorway, and we all know what's gonna happen. Everything's fine, and she gets grabbed immediately. That's, trope fucking A of horror movies. Why did you do that? That doesn't seem like, for everything else that's going on in this movie, all this subversion of expectations, all of this challenges on ideas and norms, why would you have that in it? It feels like something that they put in for A, the trailer, because you better believe it's in the trailer, and B, because somebody told him to.
Yeah, you know what? I'm wondering, I can see definitely studio meddling. It's got sort of the signs of that. I also wonder how much of it is just the difficulties of adaptation, since this is based on a novel, and I haven't read the novel or know anything about the novel.
I have heard, just really quick to interject, that this is wildly different from the novel, but not necessarily worse. I have the novel. I'm planning on reading it, and I guess I'll tweet out when I finish it and let everybody know, but as it is, I've heard that it is very different from the books, and one of the guys I follow on Twitter did post a poll, like, if you've read the book, what do you think of it? And in general, a lot of people who read the books really liked it, but I have heard a lot of people who read the books and was like, it's too different, the book is better. So take from it what you will.
Okay. I see, yeah, because that was what I was wondering, especially with a lot of the more exposition-y moments, maybe, is like, that's the sort of thing that that's just sort of how a book works a lot of the time. Like, you do have chunks of explaining, like, you can more easily just explain somebody's backstory or background in like a paragraph and have it feel a little bit more natural than having a character say it in a film. It's just sort of the difference between two mediums. Yeah, so but if the book is like totally different, then I guess that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's I would, as I said, I'm really excited to read this book because I loved the movie and I heard the book is just as good. So I hope it's different in a really good way. So now that we've got some of kind of the more mechanical ideas on how the deaths work and the directorial and clever ideas behind it, I do kind of want to briefly touch on theme, just to kind of run through an interesting idea on how this movie is presented and how it uses deaths to that effect. The basic crux of this movie, if you want to look at it thematically, and I'm going to argue really quick that I don't know that the theme of this movie entirely. I think that there's a lot that can be taken from it, but I think that Film Critic Hulk, whose article I will have linked down below, does a very good job of explaining how he sees the theme of the movie, and I don't think he's wrong, but I think it's one interpretation of many, and I've seen a lot of people say, I don't know how to apply any sort of theme to this movie, and I think that's also an interesting idea, that this might just be a really interesting science fiction movie. But neither here nor there. The theme that is argued for most frequently, I see, is the theme of change and essentially the inevitability of it. And it's pretty easily grasped. You have this strange object flies in from beyond. It hits ground. It starts changing things. It's a slow-moving impact, to pun not intended, as how it shifts the environment and everything like that. And everyone who goes in essentially to fight the change, to stop the change, meets pretty horrible deaths. So it is kind of a, change is inevitable. To fight change is to spell your own destruction type of thing. And that's really consistent with every character bar one. And I think her characters would really underscore the themes of change within this movie, which is to say she dies really peacefully. She kind of accepts what's happening, recognizes the change in herself, in the world, and goes off screen. And when we pan over to her, she is gone, but in her stead is essentially a number of flowers in the shape of people, which, she's clearly become one of them, but she went peacefully and just accepted her death, accepted her part of changing.
I'm trying to reconcile this a little bit with the some of the other characters, because she definitely, we can see this dichotomy with her and the girl who ends up going crazy. Like, she's obviously fighting and ends up getting like a really bad death as a result. But I don't know how much this paradigm would work for the other characters. I guess we have the the psychologist, what's her name? I don't remember any of their names. But the main leader of the expedition, the one with cancer who didn't plan on coming back out, she ends up getting the way the movie frames her character is a little strange to me, in that it seems like she is also sort of accepting in a way, but the movie thinks that she's kind of fighting, but then she ends up getting assimilated into the big swirly hole boy.
And there's the title of the episode.
And then earlier in the movie, the character wasn't around for that long to make that much of an impact. The one who first gets eaten by the bear, she has her conversation where she's talking about how she had to say goodbye twice, about saying goodbye to both her daughter, that is the source of her pain and trauma, and the person that she used to be. And in general, she seems like less of a fighter than maybe like Natalie Portman's character, but still is the first of our core group to end up going, and again gets it really bad with the bear. So I don't know. I think it's I don't have a particular scene by scene breakdown on this, but I think the acceptance of change with the girl who ends up turning into flowers, that's crystal clear right there. But I'm not sure, Natalie Portman's character ends up getting assimilated, and maybe this is just a good opportunity for me to just jump into some of my issues with the ending, because Natalie Portman's character ends up fighting in a way that's very, very action movie, with the white phosphorus grenade, and blows up the swirly multicolored alien interdimensional being, Shimmer, whatever. And in general, like, I just wasn't feeling the tone of this sequence, how it kind of starts, like, with, it starts off with a good setup, like, you get to the lighthouse, and there's the crystals on the beach, and, like, she goes into the hole, and, like, there's all this, like, system of tunnels, and the psychiatrist is down there, and she ends up getting absorbed, and then after that, it's when, like, the mirroring starts to happen. And I mean, I don't have anything, like, particularly, like, smart to say in terms of, like, oh, like, this is why I thought it was ineffective. But in general, I just thought the tone was a little too schlock at that moment, particularly with the way it resolves the grenade. And the fact that it ends up being such an action movie thing, and that, I mean, she's still, like, we get at the end, like, her with the tattoo, and then even more, like, way more explicitly with her with the eyes.
Fuck the eyes.
We get, yeah, fuck the eyes. We get that regardless, she has been assimilated, but not in a particularly violent way. So I don't know. I guess with the ending of this movie,
she was burned alive. She burned in a flaming tower alive. She was burned alive. That's not violent?
Oh, right. Yeah, because then the thing like takes on her face, and then it's not her. Yeah, right. I'm forgetting that little beat. Because then that's the gotcha.
And also, the psychiatrist woman was deatomized.
But she wasn't fighting the change.
So, really quick, because I have... this is a perfect example as to why I think that this movie's theme is kind of loose and in the air. But I have kind of a counterpoint, which is to say that everyone who went in there essentially was going in there to stop what was happening. The girl who embraced change and became flowers embraced it. I think that the psychiatrists kind of embraced her motive more than anything was to see what was happening, to see if she could stop it if she could, but more than anything she just wanted to know. And I think that her annihilation made sense as her reward / punishment, her consequence for knowing change.
Wait, so the movie is punishing her for knowing change, for not being resistant enough?
Is it a punishment though? Like, that's the real question here. Is the the flower girl accepted change and wasn't, I guess if you want to call death a punishment, was punished for it as well. So I think that it's essentially saying that change is immutable. So even if you accept it, it's going to happen. It's just how it happens. And I would even say that, I kind of got the idea that the psychiatrist down there wasn't really herself at the moment. So I think that there's a level of not understanding really what ended up happening at the lighthouse when she got there. So I think that that's kind of neither here nor there, and I think that the psychiatrist is kind of a weird case because of that. But I don't know. I do see what you're saying, though. I think that she kind of sticks out as a confusing part, and I would really need to, I think, watch the movie again to give you a more definitive answer one way or the other. But I think that there is an argument to be made.
Yeah, certainly. And then I think I just, on a more like nuts and bolts level, I just want to check and make sure that I'm not crazy.
Okay.
Regarding Natalie Portman getting burned alive, because that's the other thing that was sort of eye-rolly to me about the ending was that first of all, I think the staging of her, so it turns. Does the gooey creature turn into her before or after she hands it the grenade? I thought it was like it turned into her and then she handed it to it.
Yes. I'm not. What is your
Okay,
ultimate
all right.
question? I think is my answer.
Okay, so my ultimate question is that we know at the end that she has been assimilated or whatever.
Yeah.
But wasn't the body that got burned, the finger quotes body that got burned, the goo that like took her shape? Which, I mean, I guess like could have been switching. I guess this is my problem with another problem I have with the ending is just that, and the fact, one of the reasons I think the action finale doesn't really fit is that we get like the layout of her fighting the goo boy. The goo boy turns into her. She hands it the grenade. It blows up. She runs. We're meant to think that was her, because the person handing off the grenade was the one that we had been following, not the one that the goo person turned into.
But here's where I think the idea of the switch happened, because while we're following there, at one point they're both knocked out, or more than that, she's knocked out. If you remember, they're against the door, and the goo forms over her, and she passes out.
Oh, I didn't realize I didn't think she actually passed out.
Yeah, because I
didn't remember that.
It hits, and we get the black screen that opens onto them laying next to each other.
Oh, I see.
So it's very ambiguous as to who is it at that point. It's supposed to look very clear, but we'd already had the stage set that you question yourself seeing yourself from Oscar Isaac's performance earlier when he blows himself up with the phosphorus grenade, as he is not sure which is really him.
Okay, so that there was something that I missed then. All right, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah. You're good.
Regardless, though, I just think that, and this is maybe where like expecting it to be like a 2001 is maybe like going against what the movie was going for. But I wanted, like, as far as the tone of the movie and getting closer to the lighthouse, like the heart of darkness, and like things are getting more intense as you go deeper into the shimmer. Like, honestly, it felt like you could splice that crazy ending sequence of 2001 into this, and like it would be an appropriate payoff for the movie, the movie that had been building up. And so maybe just the fact that the ending, that it did go for kind of the gotcha, that it was a little less sort of challenging, was maybe disappointing to me.
No, I actually 100% agree with you on this one. I think you are right that it did feel like it was building up to a more esoteric 2001 Space Odyssey ending, which, God help me, I would have loved. I fucking adore that shit. But I also think that the eye scene at the end where they're like, oh, she's definitely one of whatever it is now, I think really ruined a lot of the visual storytelling that had taken place up to that point. I see, and this, as I said, I think it goes back to studio meddling. I think that there wanted to be a little bit more questioning within the movie, and I think that we were left with not any. It really became very clear as to what was happening across the board. We lost any sort of ending motif. We didn't get the space baby of 2001. We didn't get the, is she evil? Or not evil, but is she creepy goo boy of Blade Runner? It just kind of became, okay, it's over. Neat.
It reminded me a lot of the ending to Edge of Tomorrow, actually. That everything just sort of wraps up really neatly, and we get like one final shot that's just like, oh, okay.
I wonder, here's my wondering actually, is the book is a trilogy, and I wonder if they're just like, we have to wrap this up in this movie because we're not getting two more. It's not happening. At that point, I'm pretty sure they already knew that they had lost their overseas. I don't know if you know this, but this movie didn't get played overseas. It went direct to Netflix in 6 days from recording. It's in the UK. It is available only on Netflix starting March 12th. It did not get a theatrical release.
Oh.
Yeah, the U.S. is like the only place that got a theatrical release of this movie. So I can't help but
Weird.
wonder if they had already basically been like, all right, write it off, release it. You know, we're going to get a shit ton of people who really like it. And I mean, I'm going to chalk it up as probably an instant in the science fiction fandom type of thing. I think it's going to hold up really well. But it's not going to make any money. It's going to be a B quality or B tier movie in terms of income, and sure enough, it's made like $9 million.
Huh. Strange.
Yep, it's a bummer. It's a big bummer. We'll be back next week.
Yeah.
On that note, how the hell do we normally end this stuff? I'm Sean McKinda.
You can find him on Twitch, I suppose.
Yeah. If you want to go, I'm on twitch.tv/helpless_Skippy. I stream all the fucking time now. It's not just the usual Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday. Twice on Sunday, twice on Thursdays, once on Wednesday, once on Tuesday. And coming up, I have lots of plans for Saturdays, so tune in for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I have a running tab of every movie I see this year at Sean_McKinda on Twitter. That's MEKINDA. There's no C. Everyone thinks there's a C. Go check that out. Hit me up. Let me know what you think of Annihilation. Like, I'm really curious to hear more about thoughts, theories, stuff like that. I will talk about this movie until I die.
I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me on Twitter at JacksonJKeller, where I'll be shitposting.
Yeah, that's about right. As always, the thanks goes out to Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide Alternate Take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. If you want to keep up to date with our Twitter page, you can find us at BADH_cast on Twitter. We post as regularly as we can, usually with updates as to whether we're going to have an episode this coming week, which from now on we should be having episodes. We're also trying to get a little bit more interactive with the community, so if you have thoughts about what we should do, ideas for old movies we should watch, or just want to yell at us for having wrong opinions, go do it there. We'll talk to you.
Tell Sean we should do the rest of JoJo. Enough people do it, maybe he will.
Please don't make me do the rest of JoJo. I don't have time to watch another 3 seasons or whatever the fuck it is. Next week, we're going to be talking about A Wrinkle in Time. Neither of us really have any idea what to expect from this movie, so it might be a short episode as we just kind of go, yeah, it was good. Or, yeah, it was bad. See what happens. I imagine it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be bad.
Find out on the next exciting episode of Beating a Dead Horse.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go